So, what could a teacher abusing their student negatively affect their child in class? How could that affect the student's learning?
Well, the abuse is kind of a broad term.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about, regardless of on the spectrum of abuse, because abuse could be something as simple as just, being sarcastic to the child. And depending on that child's personality, I mean, some children you can say, oh, you can do better than that, and be sarcastic, and that child will go, well, let me just show her. I'm going to work harder, and I'm, going to show that teacher that I'm not stupid. But some children, depending on their personality, can actually internalize that comment and actually believe it, and it then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. For example, I used to work juvenile probation, and we had to be so careful how we said things to the young people that were in our care, because one of the kids, you could say, oh, you're such a juvenile delinquent, right? And it wouldn't bother them. But another kid, if they internalized that, would actually start to behave in ways that would line up with that label. And so we have to be so careful about labeling children as being advanced or slow or whatever the label is, because some kids will then take on that label and actually begin to behave in those ways. Now, if we're talking serious abuse, obviously physical, that there's never a time when that's okay. But sometimes with some children, verbal abuse, even just condescending tones, can be just as detrimental as physical abuse. It just depends on the child.
How have you ever been personally targeted by a teacher?
Targeted? Well, there was a math teacher this one year that refused to acknowledge me or would actually ignore me for several minutes on end. And I mean, to give an example, there was this one time she was passing out tests, and she was calling out names as she was passing out tests, and she was like, oh, I have one test left. I don't think Ken's here today. And I was like, I'm right here, Miss Blank. I'm actually standing right next to you. And she was like, yeah, I don't think she's here. Where could she have possibly gone? Where is she? And my friend was finally like, she's actually right there. And she's like, oh goodness, I just didn't even see you there. I'm like, I'm right here. You're not blind. You're quite young, actually. So it's not completely impossible to acknowledge me. That's actually most of my math teachers have either ignored me or just labeled me as a useless case and kind of shoved me to the side. Except for one. And she was awesome.
The legality of tenure is that it's too costly for students and teachers, and it is too much of a protection for the teachers, which keeps them from being able to be fired. Tenure, which was created for the protection of teachers through due process of law, has now evolved into teachers being protected forever or a job for life.
So, what kind of effects do you think teachers have on developing kids?
Well, first off, I think it depends on the age. If we're talking young children under the age of, say, 12, it's going to have a significant impact on those children. Beyond the parents, of course, the family is going to have the primary effect on that child's development. But once that child leaves out of the house, goes to preschool or daycare or first grade and so on, then that child is being exposed to a new authority figure. And that authority figure can have a tremendous influence on the development of self-esteem, on confidence, I mean, we could probably spend a day talking about the kinds of things that that teacher could do, either positively or negatively for them.
One. Okay, children, I've just been granted tenure, so I'm going to sit back and let Ralph teach for a while.
Class, in what year was 1 plus 1? The answer is the amazing Ralph.
You can get tenure.
Okay, talk about your last year's math teacher.
Last year, I took algebra with Trig, which was terrible, and I hated every second of it, and I didn't understand. I still don't know what the unit circle is. I can draw the degrees, that's it. And my teacher his teaching style was to show us how to work a problem on the board and not stop. He would go really fast. He wouldn't stop for questions. If someone raised their hand, he would either ignore them or yell at them for raising their hand.
How long did he work there?
He's tenured.
Yeah.
He's tenured. He's been there.
Okay, just want to make sure. You need to mention tenure somewhere.
Yeah, he's been there a while. His wife works there, and I'm pretty sure they were married before they started working. Like a year before or something like that, and he has a daughter in college. So if that tells you anything, he's been there a while. And he would, as I said, write the problem on the board and then give us a worksheet and then sit at his desk and do computer work. And if we didn't understand, he would be like, well, didn't you watch me do it on the board? Yes, but I don't understand it. And he'd be like, well, go on the Edmodo page and look at that. That'll help you. And I'm like, no, it doesn't help me. You need to actually sit here and explain it to me. So I would actually have that physics teacher that I was talking about earlier sit down with me in my study hall and explain it to me, which only worked 50% of the time because my physics teacher was like, what is trigonometry? Like, I mean, he knew, but he was like, why are you wasting my time with this? And I was like, because I love you, come back.
After the affair.
Yeah, that was after the affair. And my 8th grade, yeah, you're gonna cut that part out in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the one editing this. Matt might weave it in. You don't know.
I'm sorry.
Hi, Matt. I didn't actually have an affair with my physics teacher.
I'm sorry how we've made this pretty hard on you to edit. You just keep saying shit in the middle.
It's okay.
I'll just throw a goddamn it, Matt, in there once in a while. Well, my 8th grade math teacher, the first day of 8th grade, and I remember this vividly because it scarred me for life, my guidance counselor had given me the wrong schedule, so I had my 2nd and my 4th periods swapped. So I sat through all of science for 2nd period, and then I came into 4th period math, and I was told that my name wasn't on the list. And I was like, what? And then it was a mess. The guidance counselor came in and she was like, oh, this is wrong. I guess I just gave you the wrong one. And I'm like, thanks. First day of 8th grade, I thought I was going to be cool this year. It didn't happen. Right, Stuart?
Right.
And so she took me back to my new 4th period, which was science that I had already sit through in 2nd period. So I now have never met my math teacher, except for the time that she said, your name's not on the list. And then when I insisted that I had this class and showed her my schedule, she called a guidance counselor on me, who then proved me wrong. Took a real hit to my 7th grade scene phase ego there.
I thought this was 8th grade.
It was the 8th grade, but it was the first day of 8th grade, so I was still going through my 7th grade scene phase. You know how it is. I also still wasn't cool, so.
Wasn't I making an 8th grade scene phase at that point in time?
My 8th grade scene phase. Shut up,
I'm
Stuart.
just here for clarification.
You're just here to be a pain in my ass.
That's my official title, yes.
God, I hate that guy.
Okay.
I hate you too, Matt.
Matt, if I'm still cool with you, don't listen to her. She's mean.
Yes. Okay.
Anyway, what she did to me. So next day, second day of school, I
Wait,
walk
let me
in.
restart this because this is borderlining 5.
Anyway, so it's the second day of school, and I walk into math class in the second period, which is where I'm supposed to be at the appropriate time, and Miss What's-Her-Face is there, and she's like, "Oh, aren't you the girl from yesterday who came in late?" And I'm like, "What do you mean came in late? I just didn't show up at all." And she was like, "Oh, I remember you." I was like, "Oh dear God, this is gonna start again. This is just a great year, you know?" And she was like, "What's your name?" I said, "Ken." And she goes, "You're not on the list." And I was like, It's Kendra Cummin, okay? Fine, look me up by my birthday, but I want to be called Ken." And she goes, "Okay, Ken. We'll just sit you right here with these nice girls. See, don't they look nice?" I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. They weren't nice, I should note. I'm not friends with any of them. Ever. That just goes back to me being bullied. Great, that was hard. So hard.
In your 8th grade scene phase.
In my 8th grade scene phase. Jesus. And for the rest of the year, she would always like kind of crouch down next to my chair and be like, "Are you okay with this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay with this. I'm not stupid." And she's like, "All right, we never use that stupid word, all right? No one would ever call you that." And that's like the moment that I knew she thought I was mentally retarded. Like she thought I was legitimately mentally retarded. Like,
Oh my gosh.
I'm not kidding. Like she thought I was born with less chromosomes than the other kids, I guess is what she thought.
I guess-
Is that
Oh my
horrible? Can I
gosh.
not say that?
No,
I think
no.
it's more chromosomes.
It's less chromosomes.
No, it's more.
It's more.
It's more than it's more.
If
See,
you
didn't
go-
pass bio either, guys. I actually did pass. I passed bio.
Oh my
Second
gosh.
place.
I've never had a teacher accuse someone of being mentally retarded before.
Like, it just occurred to me one day, and she didn't stop. I had to like physically explain to her, like, "Hey, I'm okay. I mean, I'm not okay, but I'm equally as mentally sufficient as the other 8th graders in the room." She did other stuff too. Like if I was writing in class, she'd throw away scenes that I was writing.
That's rude.
Yeah, I would write in pages of my math notebook because I didn't want to pay attention to math, obviously. And she would pick up my notebook, tear out the page, throw it in the trash can, and then give me back my notebook. And I was like, "You can't do that." She was like, "Actually, yes, I can."
You can't. That's your property.
Yeah, I mean, it has my name on it, lady. And she was like, "Well, it's my classroom, so I can do whatever I want."
And how long did she work there?
It was her first year, my year, and she didn't come back the next year.
That's lucky.
So I got poetic justice there. Yeah, it's lucky that I got the worst teacher in history. She's a principal now, by the way.
Oh,
didn't get
that's
fired.
that's worse.
She got promoted. She's a principal at some middle school somewhere in some state. I don't know. I don't keep track of her. I don't Facebook stalk her.
I don't know.
If I did, I'd start deleting her posts and be like, "Ha ha ha, it doesn't feel so great, does it?"
The culture of education has changed a lot over the years. Tenure was created over a century ago, back in 1909. Back then, teachers could be fired for almost anything. Being overweight, having certain political opinions, but that has all changed a lot. Today, our educational culture does not depend on whether or not our teachers are fat or not, but rather the relationship between a student and teacher. Students rely on teachers to help them prepare them for the long road ahead, and that can be hard when teachers don't really care.
Tenure is by no means a job for life. In many instances, it's a good thing. Tenure usually kicks in after 2 to 4 years, and overall, tenure makes the process of laying off good teachers and bad teachers harder. The problem arises when a bad teacher is granted tenure.
In many cases, teacher evaluations can be costly to the schools and state. But teacher evaluations, which are meant to evaluate the performance of teachers, are so lenient in their evaluations that 9 out of 25,000 teachers received an unsatisfactory rating in Washington, D.C., an area in which failing students in schools are plentiful. It is also reported that teacher evaluations are made in which it is hard for a failing teacher who scored a previous good score to get a bad review on future evaluations. We need to take a stand against bad education. You need to speak up against bad teachers and ask for more student evaluations and more teacher checkups, which will allow administrations to better education systems, evaluations, and reforms.
Also need to come up with a way to accurately judge and grade our teachers. The unions of the teachers, they will cry foul on this and they hate it, which I find so ironic. They spend their lives judging and evaluating and grading children, yet how dare we ever judge, evaluate, and grade them? Look, teachers get job security according to length of employment. That is it. And when it comes time to fire and cut teachers due to budget costs or drops in enrollment, the ones with the least amount of time on the job go first, no matter what. A new teacher that is excellent will be let go first over a mediocre teacher who has been there 20 years solely because of the length of employment. Look at this. Over the past 10 years in New Jersey, only 20 teachers have been fired for inefficiency. That is 2 teachers a year. There are 108,591 full-time teachers in New Jersey, and you're telling me only 2 of them are inefficient on the job? Even worse, once tenure hits, sometimes even gross and disturbing behavior cannot get you fired.
Deal with poor performing teachers in the workplace that had tenure?
I've worked with poor performing teachers who had tenure, but tenure wasn't the issue. It was a lack of teachers to replace that. In Oldham County, it's less of an issue because there are so many teachers that need jobs that even if you have tenure, there's ways to get rid of it.
I think that tenure is because they're having that's but teachers that don't deserve the job are getting it, and it's just a contract. It's kind of fun to get over. I mean, it's an awful idea. Tenure is a waste of money and a waste of time.
Okay.
You don't have to do this.
No.
Tenure is communism.
Final, and she decided that since she couldn't find it, I just didn't take it, and she wasn't going to allow me to take it again, so brought my grade down from 91 to 83.
But you don't think that's fair?
That's not fair at all. She lost it.